Awesome. So my name is Esteban. I get the honor of doing the lesson this morning for you guys. I do want to start with the question, and hopefully you guys could answer the question. There's a question. If God could have you be someone in the Bible, who would it be and why? Think about it. If God could have you be someone in the Bible, anywhere in the Bible, New Testament, Old Testament, who would it be and why? Anybody? Oba?
Esther. Because she was a queen. But it was like, it happened like seemingly out of nowhere. And she was put in a position where she had influence over the king.
Mm-hmm.
And she literally like saved the nation of Israel. Because she's like, hey, actually I'm a Jew. Save my people because your right hand is trying to kill all of us. So I feel like even in my life now, like being put in a position of leadership, I feel like Esther, because I think her uncle, he's like, oh, if you don't do this, because obviously she was scared to tell him and talk to him. She's like, hey, if you don't do this, like you and your family will die, but I'm going to save my people.
Right.
So I feel the same way. God's like, hey, you don't have to do this, but you'll die, quote unquote, right?
Right.
But I'm going to save my people.
Amen.
So I don't want to miss out on that.
Awesome. Let's get one more. Marvin.
I want to say Benaiah, which is like one of the mighty soldiers of
David's
army, right? I was compared to this by Alex. Just being brave and willing to do the extreme for the gospel.
Yeah, that's definitely you. Well, for me, I'll probably say Moses. Right? I love Moses, and I love his relationship with God, and that's what I want to talk about. Right? I want to talk about him and just tell you why I love the relationship that Moses and God had. It was so intimate and so reverent. If you guys could turn to Exodus 32. Exodus 32, we're going to read verses 1 through 5, and then we're going to jump to Exodus 33 afterwards. So it's Genesis, Exodus 32, verse 1. It says, when the people saw that Moses was so long in coming down from the mountain, they gathered around Aaron and said, come, make us gods who will go before us. As for this fellow Moses who brought us up out of Egypt, we don't know what has happened to him. Verse 2, Aaron answered them, take off the gold earrings that your wives, your sons, and your daughters are wearing, and bring them to me. So all the people took off their earrings and brought them to Aaron. He took what they handed him and made into an idol cast into the shape of a calf, fashioning it with a tool. Then they said, these are your gods, Israel, who brought you up out of Egypt. Verse 5. When Aaron saw this, he built an altar in front of the calf and announced, tomorrow there will be a festival to the Lord. If you guys want to jump to Exodus 33, verse 7. It says, now Moses used to take a tent and pitch it outside the camp, some distance away, calling it the tent of meeting. Anyone inquiring of the Lord would go to the tent of meeting outside the camp. And whenever Moses went out to the tent, all the people rose and stood at the entrance to their tents, watching Moses until he entered the tent. As Moses went into the tent, the pillar of cloud would come down and stay at the entrance while the Lord spoke with Moses. Whenever the people saw the pillar of cloud standing in the entrance to the tent, they all stood and worshipped, each at the entrance to their tent. Verse 11, the Lord would speak to Moses face to face, as one speaks to a friend. Then Moses would return to the camp, but his young aide Joshua, son of Nun, did not leave the tent. Verse 12, Moses said to the Lord, you have been telling me, lead these people, but you have not let me know whom you will send with me. You have said, I know you by name, and you have found favor with me. If you are pleased with me, teach me your ways so that I may know you and continue to find favor with you. Remember that this nation is your people. The Lord replied, my presence will go with you, and I will give you rest. Verse 15. Then Moses said to him, if your presence does not go with us, do not send us up from here. How will anyone know that you are pleased with me and with your people unless you go with us? What else would distinguish me and your people from all the other people on the face of the earth? And the Lord said to Moses, I will do the very thing you have asked, because I am pleased with you and I know you by name. Then Moses said, now show me your glory. And the Lord said, I will cause all my goodness to pass in front of you, and I will proclaim my name, the Lord, in your presence. I will have mercy on whom I will have mercy, and I will have compassion on whom I will have compassion. But he said, you cannot see my face, for no one may see me and live. Verse 21, then the Lord said, there is a place near me where you may stand on a rock. When my glory passes by, I will put you in a cleft in the rock and cover you with my hand until I have passed by. Then I will remove my hand and you will see my back, but my face must not be seen.
Wow.
Incredible passage.
Wow.
It's a lot of a read right here, but it's incredible. We're going to break it down. This morning, family, I would love to talk about an obsession. Not just any regular obsession, but a holy obsession. Something to give your life away. Something that you can spend the rest of your life chasing after. And it's simply this, to chase and understand more of God's glory. Right? Out of all the passages in the scripture, this one in particular puts a fire in me. It makes me go after the heart of God even more. It makes me almost jealous when I see the relationship Moses had with God. I mean, look at what God says, right? It says about Moses. It says that he spoke to him face to face as one speaks to a friend. Wow. I read this verse and it makes me want that. You know, it makes me desire that. Like, I want that. I don't know what that means, but I want to talk to God face to face. It makes me desperate to know God even more. And maybe, right, this phrase, when you read it, it doesn't mean much to you, right? Maybe you read this passage without fully understanding the intentions the writers had when they wrote this, right? Face to face to them meant that Moses had access to the deep parts of God. He had access to the deep parts of the heart of God, and God had access to the deep parts of Moses. That's what it meant to be friends, right? I believe that the greatest honor in life, right, the highest place in life is to be called a friend of God. Right? It's to love, to have God's heart, and for Him to have yours. But what we see here, what we see in this two passages, right? We see two distinct relationships, right? We see two distinct views of God, right? We see Moses. He took his tent of meeting. He would carry it up the mountain. He would struggle going up the hill to know God. And we see the rest of the Israelites who stayed behind, who stayed in the comforts of not having to go up the mountain and made a God in their own image. Wow. Now, for us this morning, I believe we all have a decision to make. We can either decide to struggle up the mountain of knowing God. It will take discipline. It will take tears. It will take searching. It will take wrestling to find the heart of God. Or you can stay behind, being comfortable making a God that fits your desires. What's so interesting, right? What's so interesting is that in their minds, they were not creating a new God. In fact, they said, these are your gods who brought you out of Egypt. It also says that tomorrow we will do a festival to the Lord. What that means is that they didn't know the God they were worshiping. And because they didn't know Him, they created whatever concept of God they had in their mind. Wow. They added attributes that did not belong to Him. They molded a God out of their darkened hearts. Wow. A lot of us read this passage thinking, obviously, they were ignorant. Right? I would never do something like that. I would never create a golden idol. And yeah, we might not make an idol to worship, but we for sure are able to worship a God and picture God in a way that the Bible does not portray Him. We create an image of God based on what we think God should be like. We create a God based on our experience, worshiping a God that we don't know. It's like the Samaritan woman in John chapter 4:22. It says that she worshipped a God she didn't even know. And I believe the most important thing in life, it's not who you think you are, right? The most important thing in your life is who you think God is. Wow. It says whatever comes to mind, whatever comes to your mind when you think about God will transform your spiritual life way more than anything else in your life, because we always reflect the God that we worship. And I want to ask another question. Who knows what theology means? Anybody?
The study of God.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the study, the nature of God, the attributes of God. So whatever theology you have will transform your life because we act based on what we believe. So if we have a small concept of God in our life will reflect that, right? But if we have a big concept of God, our life will also reflect that, wow. Right? Our faithfulness, our worship, our evangelism, our prayer life will be as powerful as your knowledge of God. You know, some see God as a magical genie, right? God is just there to grant all your wishes, all your desires, and you get the lamp, you kind of scrub it, He comes out, He gives you 3 wishes, and now you go back to under the bed. So we use God, right? Others see him as the police, right? He's there just waiting for you to mess up and for him to strike, right? As soon as you mess up, he's like, okay, let me see. As soon as Elba messes up, I'm going to strike. Others see him like that. And I think the worst one is seeing God as a checkbox, right? Going to God because it's a cultural thing. I'm in the South, might as well go to church. Right? God becomes a checkbox.
Wow.
There's no real passion for him. We just go to church to scratch our spiritual itch.
Wow.
Right? And this morning, we all have a decision to make. And I believe it's going to be one of the most important decisions of your life. We are either going to take our tent like Moses and struggle up the mountain of the knowledge of God, which will take discipline, or we stay down where it's comfortable and model a God after our own image. Wow. My goal this morning is for all of us to look at the story of Moses and get hungry and get desperate to light up a fire in you for more of God. Right? The title of the lesson today is simply that: show me your glory. Right? When the Bible talks about knowing God, right away in our minds, the way we define that is just getting information, right? Or knowing facts about something. You know something, I know facts, I know certain things about that thing. For example, we can say we know the president. Right? We know the president of the country because we know his name, we know his date of birth, we've seen him on TV, we can enjoy the benefits of his government and obey the laws, but that doesn't mean we have intimacy with the president. And it's the same with God. We can know things about God, but it doesn't mean you know God. Wow. Right? And the Hebrew word, this is so interesting, the Hebrew word for know, it means way more than just information. Right? It actually is the same word used in Genesis 4:1. It says that Adam knew Eve and she conceived. Wow. That's the same word. When the Bible talks about knowing God, it's the same word used in Genesis 4:1 that says that Adam knew Eve and she conceived. There's an intimacy. There was also a closeness between Moses and God. Right? And I don't know the reason why, right, you guys came this morning. I hope and pray that you did not come today just to get something out of God. Or because you want to find a girlfriend or a boyfriend, or just to get a miracle from God, or even worse, you just came to check your spiritual weekly box. Right? I pray and hope that you came this morning because you truly want God, regardless if He gives you a miracle or not. Wow. Right? When I read the story of Moses, it challenges me so much, and it makes me want more of God. Right? And just like Moses, right? He did not want to leave the mountain until he got whatever he wanted. If this morning you are sick of having a shallow relationship with God, if you're sick of not knowing God fully, I would ask the person that brought you this morning to pray with you and study the Bible, even fast together, until you really start seeking God with all of your heart. And come to know God in the same way a husband knows his wife. When I read this passage in Exodus, I see 3 types of relationships. And I believe we all fall in one of these categories. The first one would be the people that stayed behind in the camp and made a god out of their own image. These people, as long as they have something to worship, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what it is. If it's good to go, these people don't bother to search for the truth. If it looks like it, if it smells like it, if it's close enough, that's all I need. I mean, I don't really want to look for the truth. If it's close enough to it, I'm good. I'm satisfied. Wow. Right? The second one is when you just want God's favor. Right? Are you here this morning because you want to get something out of God? Or you want God to bless, or you want God to bless you. God told Moses, I know you by name, and you have found favor with me. My presence will go with you, and I will give you rest. The problem with this one is that sometimes we start focusing on God's favor, on God's gift, way more than on the gift giver himself. We go to God because we want His blessings and miracles instead of God. It could become a trap for our hearts because it could stop us from being desperate for God. And I know a lot of us here might think, wow, like what could be better than that? Right? What could be better than being blessed by God? What could be better than being favored by God? Right? But you know what? When you think about Moses, right? When I read the story of Moses in Exodus, that wasn't enough for Moses. He had all the favors in the world. He had the blessings of God, but he wanted more than just that. He wanted God Himself. Wow. Right? I could imagine Moses talking to God, telling God, like, I'm so grateful for your grace. I'm so grateful for your favors. But Father, I did not just come here to get a blessing. I want more. I desire more. And that's when Moses asked him, show me your glory. Wow. You know? And that's the third level. The third level of relationship with God. The level of God's glory. You know, I could just imagine God talking to Moses like a friend. Listen, Moses, you don't know what you're asking. If I show you my glory, you'll die. My glory is way too much for any human being to handle. Listen, I already gave you so much. I gave you my favor, my blessings, but my glory will kill you. I could imagine Moses telling God again, God, I'm so grateful for all you've done for me. Don't get me wrong. I appreciate all, but I did not come all the way here for just that. I did not come up to the mountain just for the miracles. I want more. I want it all. And I could just imagine Moses like screaming to God, God, like I prefer like dying and seeing you than living and not having you. Wow. That was the heart of Moses. It's like, I've seen all the miracles. That doesn't satisfy me. I want you. Even if it kills me, I want to know your glory. Show me your glory. And that's a relationship. That's why God called him his friend. And then God told him, Moses, okay, fine. I'll show you part of my glory. But you have to stand on the rock. And how many here know that the rock is Christ? There's no way any of us can see the glory of God apart from Christ. Then God showed Moses his glory. Now, keep in mind, Moses at this point, he had already seen the Red Sea split in half. He had already experienced God's power in Egypt. He had already seen food come from heaven. But that's not what Moses wanted. Moses knew there was more. When God showed him his glory, he did not show him all of his creation. When God showed him his glory, he simply said, I will proclaim my name. That's so interesting. God did not show Moses creations. He did not show him the galaxies. The greatest creations, things that we don't even comprehend. He did not show Moses that. When God showed Moses his glory, he proclaimed his name. That was the glory of God. Right? It's almost like God told Moses, here Moses, I know this is what you've been wanting all along. I know this is your desires. This is what you desire. It's me. Like, I'll show you who I am. I'll show you my heart. This is how I think and this is how I feel. Wow. When God proclaimed his name, he was showing Moses who he really was. Like, I know this is what you want. Like, I've shown you the miracles, but I know you want me. And he was proclaiming his name. He was showing Moses who God really was, what he thought, what he felt, what he was going through, right? And the Israelites, right, they saw so many miracles. They saw the power of God, but Moses saw the desires of God's heart. Moses wanted all of God. He didn't just want his benefits, but him. God told Moses, right, in the beginning of Exodus 33, listen, Moses, I'm going to bless you. I'm going to give you the land you have all been longing. I'll send an angel to kill all your enemies. You will possess the land, but I will not go with you. I want to ask you guys a question. Let's say God would tell you the same thing. Listen, I'm going to give you everything you've ever wanted. I'm going to give you all the desires of your heart. I'm going to give you even heaven itself, but I'm not going to be there. Would you guys take it? It's pretty challenging. It challenges the heart. If God would tell you, I'm going to give you everything you've ever wanted, all the desires of your heart, you can get heaven itself, but I'm not going to be there. Right? It really challenges the heart. But for Moses, the reason God called him his friend, which is something, right, like I said in the beginning, I want this. I want to be called God's friend. For Moses, God was his heaven. For Moses, he would rather go to hell with God than be in heaven without him. That was the heart of Moses. And that's what made God see him as a friend. That's what made God see Moses as a friend, because he wanted more than just his blessings. He wanted God himself. And this should be your great obsession this morning. This should be your holy obsession in life. It's not to get the miracles of God, right? But it's to get to know God in an intimate way, just like a husband knows a wife. There's no greater title in all of creation than to be called a friend of God. And I pray and hope the life of Moses lights a fire in you to get you desperate. I want to go to one last passage in Matthew 7. Matthew 7, and there's a reason why it's so important, because there's no other way than to have this type of relationship with God. In Matthew 7, verse 21, it says, "Not everyone who says to me, 'Lord, Lord,' will enter the kingdom of heaven, but only the one who does the will of my Father who is in heaven. Many will say to me on that day, Lord, Lord, did we not prophesy in your name, and in your name drive out demons, and in your name perform many miracles? Then I will tell them plainly, I never knew you. Away from me, you evildoers. Wow. It's a pretty intense passage, because obviously he's not talking to atheists. Obviously he's not talking to non-believers. He's talking to Christians. Only Christians use that terminology, Lord, Lord. He's talking to us. You know, and I pray and hope if you don't have that type of relationship with God where you just want to see his glory, I pray and hope that that's your desire. Make that your holy obsession, because it's the only thing that matters. And it's the only thing that God desires. He wants to know you and for you to know him. Thank you so much. To God be the glory. Amen.